قد أفلح المؤمنون.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Today we're going to be we're continuing where we left off. We're going to be going over some of the reports regarding some of the prophecies and some of the things that Imam Husayn and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said concerning what he knew would happen regarding his martyrdom. So with that being said, we're going to dive right into it, inshallah. So At-Tabari, as well as Abu al-Faraj al-Isfahani and Shaykh al-Mufid all report that Uqba ibn Sam'an said, and again we will quote At-Tabari for you guys just to make sure that our non-Arabic speakers or readers will be able to understand. He reports the following. He says that we set out at once from Qasr Bani Muqatil with him, i.e. al-Husayn, and he became drowsy while he was on his horse's back. When he woke up, he said, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. He did that twice or three times. Then his son Ali ibn al-Husayn approached him and asked, why are you praising Allah? And this is Ali al-Akbar. He said, why are you praising Allah and repeating that verse of returning to him? My son, he answered, I nodded off, and a horseman appeared to me riding a horse, and he said, men are traveling and fates travel towards them. Then I knew it was our own souls announcing our deaths to us. Father, the young man asked, does Allah regard you as evil? Are we not upon the right? Indeed we are, Al-Imam al-Husayn answered, by him to whom all his servants must return. Father, said the youth, then we have no concern if we are going to die righteously. Imam al-Husayn responded, may Allah give you the best reward a son can get for his behavior towards his father. Shaykhun al-Mufid, rahmatullahi alayh, also reports in Kitab al-Irshad in volume 2, page 132. He reports the following. He reports that, and this is recorded with his chain to Imam Sajjad salamullahi alayhi. He says, we set out with al-Husayn alayhi salam, and we did not stop at any halting place without him setting off from there by first mentioning Nabiyuna wa Sayyiduna Yahya ibn Zakaria salam alayhi wa ala nabiyina afdal salati wa salam, and his death. And he would say, there was a day, and it was a day of humiliation of the world before Allah, when the head of Yahya ibn Zakaria alayhi salam was given to one of the prostitutes of Bani Israel. Shaykhuna ibn Qawlawayh rahimahullah reports in Kitab Kamil al-Ziyarat as follows. He reports with his chain to Imamuna Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salam that al-Husayn alayhi salam was traveling towards Iraq, and he heard a man recite this poem in the middle of the night. O my camel, do not be frightened by my scolding and break out before the rising of dawn. Carry me to the best of riders on the best of journeys until you arrive at the most honorable place. Carry me to Husayn, whose grandfather is the most glorious grandfather, and Husayn is the most magnanimous one. Verily Allah has chosen him for the best of affairs. May he remain until the end of time. So al-Husayn alayhi salam replied by reciting the following poem. I shall go towards death, and there is no shame for a man in death as long as his intentions are based on the truth and he fights for Allah as a Muslim. There is no shame in death for men as long as they support the righteous ones, fight the criminals, and abandon the sinners. I shall fight, and if I live, I shall not have any regrets, and if I am killed, I will not be blamed. Nothing is more humiliating than living under the humiliation of the oppressors. And this is once again that same theme which we have been highlighting throughout this series, that this is such an important concept for Imam al-Husayn, salamullahi alayh, that there is nothing worse than the humiliation of the oppressor. Ad-Daynawari, al-Balagri, and al-Tabari report that when al-Husayn and his group, and al-Hurr and his group who had been shadowing him, reached the district of Nainawa, a village near Karbala, a messenger arrived from Kufa with instructions for al-Hurr to force al-Husayn to camp here in the open desert in a place without fortification and water. And this account, we are reading it from Tarikh al-Tabari, volume 19, page 102, page 103. So now Ibn Ziyad has sent orders to al-Hurr to stop al-Husayn from moving, to keep him in a place where there is no fortification and water. So Zuhair ibn al-Qayyim radwanullahi ta'ala alayhi advised al-Imam al-Husayn, Ya ibn Rasulullah, fighting these people now will be easier for us than fighting those who will come against us after them. By my life, after these whom you see now, a number will come against us, and you will not have the power to fight against them. Al-Husayn said, I will not begin the fight against them. So Zuhair suggested, go with us to that village so that you could stop there. It is well fortified and it is on the banks of the Euphrates, on Nul Furat. If they try to stop us, we can fight them. Fighting them will be easier than fighting those who will come after them. So Al-Imam al-Husayn asked him what the name of this village was, and he told him it was called Al-Aqr. Al-Aqr is an Arabic word which means wound. So Al-Imam al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi said, "Oh Allah, I seek refuge with you from Al-Aqr." And then he stopped. He moved until he stopped at Al-Aqr. Al-Hurr in turn carried out his orders, and he stopped him from going to either going to Nainawa or Al-Ghaduriyah on the 2nd of Muharram in the year 61 after Hijrah. And so he alayhi salam finally stopped and he set his camp in the desert land known as Karbala at a location that was without water. And that is how Imam al-Husayn salamullahi alayh stopped in Karbala. And now I shall go over some of the prophetic prophecies regarding what is about to happen. Shaykhuna Saduq rahimahullah reports in Kitab al-Khisal. We read the following report from him. He says, and he narrates this with his chain to Al-Fadl ibn Sha'ban rahimahullah. He said, I heard Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha say that Ibrahim alayhi salam wished he had sacrificed his own son Ismail when Allah Jalla wa Ala sent a sheep and ordered Ibrahim to sacrifice it instead of his son. He wished that he had not been ordered to sacrifice a sheep instead of his son, so that he could have the feeling of a father who sacrifices his dearest son with his own hands, and could deserve the highest ranks of reward for suffering calamities. However, Allah Jalla wa Ala revealed to him, O Ibrahim, who is my dearest creature to you? So Ibrahim alayhi salam responded, O my Lord, you have not created anyone who is dearer to me than your friend Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Allah asked him, O Ibrahim, do you like him more or do you like yourself more? And Ibrahim alayhi salam said, no, I like him more than I like myself. So Allah said, do you like his child or do you like your child more? And he said, verily, I like his child more. So Allah said to him, will the oppressive beheading of his child by his enemies hurt you more, or your beheading of your own child due to your obeying me? So he said, O my Lord, of course the beheading of his child by his enemies will hurt me more. So Allah said to him, O Ibrahim, a group of people who will consider themselves to be a part of Muhammad's ummah, out of animosity and oppression, will slaughter his son Hussein just like a sheep. Thus they will deserve my wrath. Then Ibrahim became extremely sad, and he felt a pain in his heart, and he began to cry. Then Allah Jalla wa Ala revealed the following to him, O Ibrahim, I accept your sorrow and your sadness due to the slaughtering of Hussein alayhi salam instead of the slaughtering you would have experienced for the sacrifice of your son Ismail, and I will grant you the highest rewards for your suffering these calamities. And according to Imam al-Ridha, and this is Allah Jalla wa Ala's words or the meaning of them, and we ransomed him with a momentous sacrifice, which is in the Quran. Shaykhuna Saduq also reported with his chain of transmission to Sa'd ibn Abdullah in the ta'wil of the ayah Kaf Ha Ya Ain Sad. And this is reported in Kitab Kamaluddin wa Itmam al-Ni'mah, another of Shaykhuna Saduq's books. And this is a very long report, and we're only going to be reading the part that concerns us. So he reports in this long hadith from Imam Sahib al-Zaman Ajjallah Farajah. He says from Sa'd ibn Abdullah, Sa'd ibn Abdullah, who is one of his representatives, one of the 4 representatives of the Imam. So this is a report from Imam Sahib al-Zaman Ajjallah Farajah al-Sharif. So he says, inform me, what is the interpretation of Kaf Ha Ya Ain Sad? So the Imam replied, these letters are from the tidings of the unseen. Allah gave them to Zakaria, and then he said it to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This was when Zakaria alayhi salam asked his Lord to inform him of the 5 names of Ashab al-Kisab. So Allah sent Jibreel to him and he informed him. So when Zakaria would mention Muhammad, Ali, Fatima, and Al-Hasan, he would be relieved from his worries and his anguish. But when he would mention the name of Al-Husayn, he would choke with tears and lose his breath. So he told him his story and said, Kaf Ha Ya Ain Sad. The Kaf is the name of Karbala. The Ha is the destruction of his progeny, Halak. The Ya is Yazid, la'inahullah, who is the oppressor of Al-Husayn. The Ain is his thirst, and the Sad is his patience, his sabr. Ain for his thirst is Atash. So when Zakaria heard that, he did not leave his temple for 3 days, and he prevented the people from visiting him, and he wept and wailed. And his lamentation was, Ya Allah, do you allow the best of your creation to be horrified by the killing of his son? Do you descend the calamity of this disaster through his annihilation? Do you dress Ali and Fatima with the clothes of this tragedy? Ya Allah, do you allow the calamity of this tragedy for them? Then he would pray, Ya Allah, grant me a son that I can recognize in my old age, and make him an inheritor and a deputy, and make his position to me like that of al-Husayn. If you grant him to me, fill me with love for him. Let me mourn for him just as Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa wasallam mourned for his son. So Allah Azza wa Jal granted him Yahya alayhi salam, and he caused him to mourn for him. Yahya was in the womb of his mother for 6 months, and al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi was in the womb of his mother for the same amount of time. And I want to highlight something here about this report. Many of us know, those of you listening who are fathers, you know how important this is, that feeling when you first realize you are becoming a father. But imagine, if you will, that you have entered into old age, into advanced age. You've reached that point where you've almost given up hope of having a child, correct? But then Allah gives you one. Allah gives you a child in your old age, out of a miracle, a gift, a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He gives you a child in that advanced age. Now imagine in this situation how painful it would be to lose that child. No one would wish that upon themselves, but we see here that Sayyidina Nabi Allah Zakaria alayhi salam, that is exactly what he asked for. He said, Ya Allah, grant me a son simply because I want to share in the suffering of Rasulullah, that I refuse to allow Rasulullah and his household to experience this calamity while I do not go through this as well. And so Allah gave him Yahya salamullahi alayhi in his old age, and this is mentioned in the Quran in Surah Maryam. And what a blessed and wonderful son Yahya alayhi salam was. And then Yahya alayhi salam, as we saw in the report of Shaykhun al-Mufid, he was essentially killed by one of the promiscuous women of Bani Israel, and his father had to go through that loss. But for the likes of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, such suffering is worth it. As for Rasulullah himself, now I shall go over some of the reports from Rasulullah himself regarding the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn. Al-Tabarani reports, and this is in multiple places in his book. This is in Kitab al-Mu'jam al-Kabir, volume 2, page 234, hadith 2750, and al-Mu'jam al-Kabir, volume 10, page 64, hadith 19128. We read the following, and these are both the same report, but he put it in two different places in his book. He reports with his chains that Salama salamullahi alayha reported the following. One day, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam was sitting in my house, and he said, no one will enter upon me. So I waited, Salama, and al-Husayn entered. Young Husayn managed to get past her, and then I heard the sobbing of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. So I went in, and I saw al-Husayn in his lap or next to him, wiping his head while he was crying. And I said, by Allah, I did not know when he entered. As in, Sayyidah Salama was worried that somehow her letting al-Husayn into the room had caused Rasulullah pain. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam said, Jibreel was in the house, and he asked me, do you love him? I replied, as for this world, yes. He said, your nation will kill him in a land called Karbala. So Jibreel took some of the soil of Karbala, or some of the dust of Karbala, and he showed it to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Years later, when al-Husayn was surrounded and he was killed, he asked, what is the name of this land? So they told him Karbala. And so he responded, Sadaqa Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ardu karbin wa bala. Rasulullah spoke the truth, a land of distress and affliction. Ibn Sa'ad also reported, and the reports that we previously cited from Mu'jam al-Kabir were authenticated by al-Haythami in his Kitab Majma' al-Zawaid in volume 9, page 219, hadith 15,116 to 15,117. Ibn Sa'ad further reports in Kitab al-Tabaqat, and he reports this again in multiple places in his book, similar to al-Tabarani in volume 6, page 417. Also, there are reports on page 418 and 419. He reports with his chains that Salama salamullahi alayha also reported that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam one night laid down to sleep. Then he woke up startled and out of breath. Then he lay down and dozed off, and woke up startled and out of breath once more than the first time. Then he laid back down and slept, and again woke up startled, and in his hand was red soil, which he was turning in his hand, and tears were streaming from his eyes. So Salama asked him, "What is this, Ya Rasulullah?" And he replied, "Jibra'il informed me that my son Husayn will be killed in the land of Iraq. So I said to Jibra'il, show me the soil of the land on which he will be killed." So he brought it to me, and this is that soil. Imam al-Baqir salamullah alayhi also reported that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam was in the house of Salama, ta'ala alayha. This is reported by Shaykhun as-Saduq in his Amali in Majlis 29, hadith number 3. Reported with his chain that Imam al-Baqir said the following: Rasulullah was in the house of al-Muminoon Salama salamullah alayha when he said to her, "Do not let anyone enter." Al-Husayn came, and he was a small child then. She could not hold anything against him to the point that he visited Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so Salama entered, following him, and she saw that Al-Husayn was on Rasulullah's chest, and Rasulullah was weeping, and in his hand was a thing which he was turning over and examining. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam said, "O Salama, Jibra'il has informed me that this one shall be killed, and this is the soil which he will be killed upon. So keep it with you. When it turns to blood, my beloved would have been killed." So Salama said to Rasulullah, "Ya Rasulullah, ask Allah to repel that from him." And so Rasulullah said, "I have done so. And Allah revealed to me that for him is a rank which none from the creatures shall attain, and that is for his Shia, as they will intercede and they will receive intercession, and that the Mahdi Ajjallah Farajuh Sharif is from his offspring. So blessed is one who is from the friends of Al-Husayn, and his Shia by Allah are the successful ones on the day of resurrection." We also have reports from Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullah alayhi foretelling the martyrdom of Imam al-Husayn. And I'm going to list all of these reports. I'm not going to show all of them because I fear it will put too much on our editor. But I will list the scholars who narrated this report. Ahmad ibn Hanbal, al-Bazzar, ibn Abi Shaybah, Abi Ya'la, al-Tabarani, ibn Sa'ad, and al-Maqdisi all reported the following. And we will quote the report from Musnad Ahmad ibn Hanbal as well as Kitab Musannaf ibn Abi Shaybah. And this is the Tahqiq of Ahmad Shakir, Musnad Ahmad, Volume 1, page 446, Hadith 648, as well as Musannaf ibn Abi Shaybah, Volume 21, page 284, Hadith number 40,150. Now, the report says the following. It says that when Ali alayhi salam was on his way to Siffin, he called out, "Be patient, Ya Aba Abdullah, be patient, Ya Aba Abdullah, on the banks of Furat." Ali then narrated, "I entered upon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam one day, and his eyes were flowing with tears. I said, Ya Rasulullah, has someone upset you? Why are your eyes flowing with tears?" So Rasulullah replied to Amir al-Mu'mineen, "No, but Jibra'il left me a while ago. He told me that Al-Husayn would be killed on the banks of Furat, and he asked, would you like to smell the dust of the land where he will fall?" And I said yes. So he stretched out his hand and picked up a handful of dust and gave it to me, and I could not help but weep. It has also been narrated that Ali alayhi salam said, "Ali will be killed in a place near the Euphrates, and I know the soil on which he will be killed not far from the two rivers." Ibn Abi Shaybah and others reported, and this report from Musannaf ibn Abi Shaybah is very interesting. There is a bit of rijal to go over here. This report can be found in Musannaf ibn Abi Shaybah, Volume 21, page 285, Hadith 40,151. So the editor here argued that this report is majhul because of Abu Harthama or Abu Harim. However, this is not true. This narrator is not majhul. If we go to Kitab al-Tarikh al-Kabir by al-Bukhari, he records his bio in Volume 6, page 617, bio 7,495, giving his name as Ubayd Abu Harim, Sama'a Aliyan qawluhu bi Karbala. So this is the same narrator. It's the one who narrates the report from Imam Ali on Karbala. As did Ibn Abi Hatim. Ibn Abi Hatim also attested him in Kitab al-Jarh wa al-Ta'dil, Volume 6, page 7, bio number 27/9277, and he says almost the same thing. Sama'a Aliyan radiyallahu ta'ala anhu qawluhu bi Karbala. Neither of them mentioned any jarh on him, and Ibn Hibban included him in Kitab al-Thiqat, Volume 2, page 400, or page 346, bio 2,660. So this report is not majhul. It is a valid report, and some people just have a problem with seeing the ajaib of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. But the report reads as follows. It says that Abu Harthama narrated, I was with Ali salamullahi alayhi by the river in Karbala. He passed by a tree under which there were deer droppings. He picked up a handful of it, smelled it, and said, 70,000 will be resurrected from this place, entering paradise without being held accountable. Shayban ibn Makhrum, who was a Uthmani, said, and this is a separate report, I was with Ali alayhi salam with him when he came to Karbala, and he said, in this place, al-Husayn ibn Ali will be killed, salamullahi alayh. There will not be any martyrs like them except for the martyrs of Badr. And this, I want you to think of the shuhada of Karbala. Al-Abbas, Ali al-Akbar, al-Qasim, the sons of Ja'far and Aqil, correct? Zuhair, al-Hurr, Joan, the shuhada of Karbala. Amir al-Muminoon himself is saying, these shuhada are unlike any other shuhada in history. The only other shuhada who can be compared to them are the shuhada of Badr. So the narrator, Shayban ibn Makhrum, says the following. He says, I said to myself, some of his statements are untrue. And then a dead donkey's leg was lying there. So I said to my servant, take this donkey's leg and bury it in a hole, then cover it. Time passed, and when al-Husayn ibn Ali was killed, I set out with my companions. We found al-Husayn's body lying on the leg of that donkey, and his companions were buried around him. These three reports that I just quoted can also be found in Kitab al-Mu'jam al-Kabir by al-Tabarani. He reports them one after the other. In volume 2, page 236, hadith 2755 to 2757. Al-Haythami authenticated them in Majma' al-Zawaid, volume 9, page 221 to page 222, hadith 15,124 to 15,126. And we see here that he authenticated all of them. The first one, he said, رواه الطبراني ورجاله ثقات. The second one, he said رواه الطبراني وفيه عطاء بن السائب وهو ثقة لكنه اختلط وبقية رجاله ثقات. رواه الطبراني ورجاله ثقات. So all three of these reports are mentioned in the books of our opponent, but for some reason none of them ever mention them. None of them mention these fada'il of the shuhada of Karbala or the fada'il of Karbala itself. Instead, they mock us for considering this land to be sacred, for respecting this land, and for weeping whenever it is mentioned. And we seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from these nawasib, and we ask him to deal with them. Ibn Sa'd reported, this is another interesting report. Ibn Sa'd reported the following in his Kitab al-Tabaqat in volume 6, page 420. He reports to his chain to Abu Ubayd al-Dhabbi, who says, we entered upon Ibn Hartham. And I want to point out here that this is probably Abu Harthama, the narrator that we spoke about earlier, and some of these reports here have that name instead. So he said that we entered upon him, we went to his house after we returned from Siffin, and he was with Ali, and he was sitting on a bench, he was sitting on the porch outside his house, and he had a woman named Harda, and she had the utmost love for Imam Ali. So we say here is a mukhalif, but he was married to a mu'minah, correct? So it says here that Harda, his wife, she's a mu'minah, she's a Shia, she's one of the supporters of Imam Ali, and she was the staunchest in confirming his statements. She would not tolerate anyone attacking or criticizing Imam Ali salamullahi alayhi. So a sheep came by and it defecated. And so Ibn Hartham, or Abu Harthama, he said, this sheep's defecating reminded me of a hadith from Ali. And so the people sitting there said, what does Ali have to do with this? So he said, we returned from Siffin and we camped in Karbala. Ali led us in the Fajr prayer among the trees and the Dawhat of Harmal. Then he took a handful of the dung of a wild deer. He smelled it and said, oh, people will be killed in this spacious land who will enter paradise without any reckoning. So Al-Harda called out to him from inside the house, and what do you find strange about this? He knows more about what he said than you do. This report has been corroborated by Shaykhuna Nasr ibn Muzahim, and this is why I made a note that sometimes the name is different. So in Kitab Waqat Siffin by Shaykhuna Nasr ibn Muzahim rahimahullah on page 140 to 141, as well as Shaykhuna Saduq, and this is an English translation for our brothers who may not be able to read the Arabic reports, in Majlis 28, hadith number 7. They both report an addition. They report something else. Ibn Sa'd does not have this addition. the same narrator says, I was in the expedition of those who Ibn Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad had sent. I was one of those people who was sent by Ibn Ziyad to fight al-Husayn. So when I saw the destination in the trees, I remembered the hadith and I sat on my camel. Then I came towards al-Husayn and saluted him and informed him about that which I heard from his father regarding that destination which al-Husayn had descended on. He asked me, are you with us or against us? The man replied, I am neither with you nor against you. I left behind sons against whom I fear Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. So then he said to me, go away. Go away to where you will not be able to see our murder nor hear our voice. For by the one in whose hand is the soul of al-Husayn, none shall consciously hear us that day and not come to our aid, but that Allah will throw him headlong into hell. And with that being said, we will bring this part to a close. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.